Hello students, welcome to the session. I am Mr. M.H. Mota, Assistant Professor, Department of Civil Engineering. This session is on a flocculation of a water. The outcome of this session. At the end of this session, you will be able to understand the process of flocculation as a significant method of the water treatment. Let's try to understand it in depth. So why generally we need to clarify the water? As we are aware, the colloids or the fine particles present in the water imparts color and turbidity to the water. These particular things are generally interfering with the aesthetical acceptability of a water. Along with that, it even creates a certain space where the bacteria can reside or live inside the water. So this, along with aesthetic, is even interfering with the health issues of the consumer. That's why we need to clarify the water. A very fine suspended type of particles and colloidal matters cannot settle down in plain sedimentation. I hope you remember the types of sedimentation we had discussed in previous sessions. So out of those different types, which are type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4 types of the sedimentation, type 1 sedimentation is a plain sedimentation. So very fine or suspended particles and colloidal matters cannot settle down in simply a plain sedimentation. So at the water treatment plant, such particles can be removed by increasing their size by changing them into a flocculated particles, which is a type 2 sedimentation. We will try to understand this in depth. So this table represents the settling velocity. Settling velocity is a velocity of a particle in vertically downward direction in water. So suppose we have a pebble of particle size around 10 millimeter, then it can settle in a water at a rate of 0.73 meter per second. If we have a coarse sand having a particles diameter around 1 mm, it will settle with a much slower rate and it will be 0.23 meter per second. If we have a very fine sand, the diameter of which is in a range of 0.01 millimeter, then it will settle at a rate of 0.6 meter per minute, which is very less as compared to previous two cases. When the particle to be removed is the silt particle having a diameter of 0.01 mm, then it will travel 8.6 meter in a span of 24 hours or 1 day. So it will be very less as compared to the previously discussed particles. When we are talking about the colloidal particles, which are having a much lower size as compared to a silt, say in a range of 10 micron, it will travel only 0.3 meter in a span of 1 year. And if those are very small colloidal particles which are in a range of 1 nanometer, then it will take millions of years to travel in a 3 meter. So what this table status is that plain sedimentation is hardly used for the removal of very fine particles present in a water. And we need to take a help of something else so that we can eliminate these particles from the water, or we can remove that from the water. So how to clarify this? For this purpose, a certain chemical compounds are added. On the thorough mixing, it forms a gelatinous precipitate which is generally called as a phloem. The colloidal particles get attracted and get absorbed, forming a bigger size flocculated particle. And as we have seen, the size increases, the amount of velocity in a vertically downward direction increases. This can be even easily understood by following a Stokes law. In simple words, it is a process of agglomeration or assemblage, means keeping all particles together and resulting in the formation of a larger particle which can be easily settled out. The chemicals used in this process are called as a coagulant, and these are usually higher valence cationic salts like aluminium or ferric. So most of the coagulants are either aluminum based or the ferric based. Alum is the most common coagulant used in water treatment. We even use that in domestic levels too for the removal of very fine particles present in the water. So how to clarify? The term coagulation and flocculation are often used to describe this process of removal of turbidity caused by very fine suspension, colloids and organic color. The coagulation describes the effect produced by addition of coagulant resulting in particle destabilization. We will try to understand this particular term destabilization in coming slides. The flocculation is the second stage of formation of settleable floc achieved by gentle and prolonged mixing. So it's going to be the second step which is helping us for the clarification. In modern terminology, this combination of rapid mixing and slow mixing is designated by a single term called flocculation. After this, the flocs are separated by the process of sedimentation or clarification. Please try to understand the difference between these two terms, which are generally used synonymally. Sedimentation is a process which generally designates the separation without the help of any foreign aid like chemical, while clarification is a term used in which we generally take help of something for the improvement of the settleability of a particle. So, colloidal stability. Colloid is nothing but the name given to a very fine particle present in a water. Those are generally called as an colloidal particles or colloids. These colloids are generally used to have a negative surface charge on it. These surface charges or electrostatic forces prevent them from agglomeration, as it is a common fact that the particles having a similar charge generally repulse. They generally don't tend to agglomerate or coming together. Even as these particles are very fine in nature, the Brownian movement keep these colloids in suspension, and these are almost impossible to remove by a gravitational settling. Now, colloids is once again, I am making it very clear to you, that is a small fine or very fine particle present in a water which is having a certain electrostatic force on it, and which is negative in most of the cases. So the major forces acting on these colloidal particles are two. One is electrostatic forces which are negative in nature. We have seen that in previous slides, and they generally are repulsive in nature. Along with that, on a surface it carries the force called as an van der Waals force, which is a force of attraction. If van der Waals forces are predominant in nature, then they will result in attraction of a similar kind of particles, and are the major forces resulting in the agglomeration. Now, generally what happens is that the electrostatic or repulsive forces are dominant in nature, because of which these particles are unable to come together. In the figure below, the forces of attraction and repulsion have been shown in the form of a graph, and that graph even describes that as the distance increases, the magnitude of these forces even are going on the decreasing. Rather, the attractive forces are effective on very lower scale of the distance between that. On the other hand, the repulsive forces are comparatively much dominant on the longer distance between the particles, because of which such particles are not able to agglomerate. If we are by one way or another able to make these particles coming in contact with each other, then these van der Waals forces may result in the agglomeration of the forces. The difference between the attractive forces in terms of van der Waals force and repulsive forces in terms of electrostatic force can result in a net forces responsible either for the agglomeration or the repulsion. Those are generally called as the total sum total of the forces. As on a larger distance itself, the total forces which are predominant are the repulsive forces. This particular thing is not making the particles coming together, and this is even called as an energy barrier for the coagulation. And the difference between the electrostatic repulsive force and van der Waals attraction force is called the combined effect of force, which are generally repulsive in most of the cases. So now, what make the particle agglomerate? So to make the particle agglomerate, we need to compress the ionic layer around it. Even we need to absorb and neutralize the charge of a particle or the things surrounding those particles. Then the sweep coagulation and interparticle bridging. These are the different processes those are happening and resulting in the agglomeration of the particles. We'll try to understand these processes one by one. Generally, when we add the alum in a water, it results in increase in the positively charged ion concentration. The quantity of ion in the water surrounding has an electrostatic potential. High function of ion concentration compress the layer which are predominantly the counter ions towards the surface of colloids. In this case, the van der Waals forces or the forces of attraction will become predominant, so the net force will be attractive as the no barrier or the energy barrier has been reduced with great extent and will help to agglomerate. Although coagulation using ferric salt or aluminum salt would not increase the ionic concentration sufficiently to affect the ion layer compression. So just try to understand this in more depth by using this figure, in which the central core is designating a certain colloidal particle which is negatively charged, and it's surrounded by a particular layer of water ions which is positively charged and has got a tremendous attraction towards it. This particular layer is called a Stern layer. Around this Stern layer, a sleeping plane or a layer of another co-ions and opposite ions has been formed, and around that there is an existence of bulk fluid. So because of this, generally the different particles are unable to come in contact with each other. If we want to make them coming in a contact with each other, then we should able to compress these layers of the surface charge. So this particular thing can be achieved by the addition of alum, where the layer of the different ions surrounding a part is getting compressed. Once we compress these two layers, then the impact of this will be reduced and the repulsion will be reduced, and it will result in the net reduction in the energy barrier. This particular figure shows the effect of this. So if we are able to compress it, then generally the energy barrier will be reduced and ultimately the forces of attraction will be predominantly available near the surface of an colloidal. And in such case, if we have the two different particles having the dominant van der Waals forces acting on it coming near to each other or striking with each other, then they will be getting agglomerated and resulting in the formation of comparatively larger particle. Second is adsorption and charge neutralization. The nature rather than quantity of ion is of prime importance in the theory of adsorption and charge neutralization. The ionization of aluminum sulfate in water produce sulfate ions may remain in the form of combined with other cations. However, the aluminum cations reacts immediately with the water and forms various aquametallic ions and hydrogen. These are the certain chemical reactions. Those are happening when the aluminum is mixed with the water. Rather, in other words, the aluminum based coagulant when added in a water forms number of aqua metallic ions like AlOH2, AlOH2 plus, Al7OH4 and AlOH3. So these are the various types of ions which are positively charged and which are resulting in the compression of the ionic layer. Along with that, it even reduces the charges on the ion, as the charges on the ions are negative in nature, and when we have the positively charged ions depositing on it will neutralize the charge. So these are the various aquametallic ions formed because of the addition of alum. These ions thus form part of the ionic cloud surrounding the colloidal and becomes of greater affinity for the surface and are absorbed on the surface charge. Once the charge is neutralized, the ionic cloud dissipates and the electrostate potential disappears, and it particular thing results in the more contact which may occur freely because of the reduction in the repulsive forces. One even may be very critical about the overdosing. Overdosing with coagulant can result in restabilization of the suspension. The charge on particle becomes reversed and the ionic cloud refall with negative ions being the counter ions, and the overall particle becomes positive charged ion because of the higher concentration or the overdosing of the coagulant, and once again will start repelling because of the dominant positively charged surface. Next is the sweep coagulation. As we have seen, one of the product of the aluminum addition is aluminum hydroxide, AlOH3. It forms the amorphous gelatinous floc that are heavier than water, and as it is heavier than water, it settles under the effect of gravity, and because of that the colloidal may become enmeshed by the sticky layer surface, and the process by which the colloidals are swept from the suspension, and because of that this particular process is known as sweep coagulation. The figure in the slide just try to describe this particular process where the aluminum hydroxide is settling down and in the process is arresting number of colloids, and because of which the colloids are enmeshed, resulting in the formation of flow or the larger sized particle. Next is interparticle bridging. Generally, large molecules may be formed when aluminum or ferric salts dissociates in water. Sometimes we even add the synthetic polymers instead of the alum in addition to these salts. These polymers may be linear or branched in nature and are highly surface reactive. As those are very surface reactive, the several colloidals may become attached to a one polymer or polymers colloidal group, and it may result in enmeshed of the number of particles. This particular figure shows the things happening under the interparticle bridging. So when we add a polymer which is highly surface reactive, it gets attracted and attached to the surfaces. Such number of particles may once again get attracted and attached to the one enmesh. Sometimes it may even happen that the large one polymeric chain may arrest number of particles and will result in a sedimentation of all particles together by forming a larger sized flow. Factors affecting the coagulation. The most important is the dose. The dose given for the coagulation should be optimum in nature. Optimum means it should not be too less or should not be greater than the expected. It should be such that it will form or it will result in a best possible coagulation. If dose is low, then coagulation will be very low, and if dose is more, then resuspension of colloids will occur because of the destabilization of the forces. Second is water quality. If a temperature is high, reaction of coagulation will be rapid. On the other hand, in cooler or colder water, the reaction will be slower. Along with that, the pH is very important. If we are using the alum as a coagulant, the pH of water should be in a range of 6 to 8.5. And if we are using the ferric based coagulants, then it is applicable for a pH range of 4 to 9. If pH is below 6 or more than 8.5 in case of alum, the overall effect will be much lesser. And next is the mixing of the coagulation. After giving the coagulant dose, rapid mixing is required for complete mixing. The duration for rapid mixing should be around 1 meter, followed by a very slow mixing which will help striking of the different particles which are destabilized in nature and are able to come in contact with each other. This time should be sufficient and is in a range of around 90 minutes or so. Whole this thing can be determined in laboratory by forming a jar test. Jar test is the test used to determine the optimum pH range and optimum coagulant dose. Generally, the jar test apparatus consists of 6 jars of 1 liter capacity and are of uniform size and shape. It also consists of mixing apparatus. First, the optimum pH is determined by adding a sample of dose and varying the pH of a sample of different jars. The pH can be varied by an addition of lime or soda ash, and then for an optimum pH, the optimum dose is determined by giving a turbidity with different dosages, and then the optimum dose can be determined. This is done experimentally in lab, and we will see this particular thing in detail in coming sessions. This is a jar test apparatus which consists of 6 jars. Even the jar test apparatus with lower number or higher number of jars and mixing apparatus are available in the market. But most commonly we use the jar test apparatus with 6 jars and having a paddles for the mixing. These paddles can be operated in variable speeds. For slow mixing, generally the expected speed is around 5 rpm or lesser, while for rapid mixing, the speed of these paddles should be more than 100 rpm. All these arrangements are available in jar test apparatus. So how we do it at water treatment plant? At water treatment plant, we add first the alum most of the times in a liquid state. Then we rapidly mix this alum with a raw water using a flash mixer or a rapid mixer. After that, agglomeration can be done using a slow mixer, and then we separate these flocks from the water in a clarifying zone or sedimentation tank. This is the common figure which explains the different processes we have learned in the coagulation process. So that's it for this session. Let's meet in next session to learn more. In next session we will learn how these things are practiced at water treatment plant. So thank you. Thank you for your patience learning, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.